This is the story of the real American gangster. How a kid from North Carolina rose to control one of the most lucrative heroin operations in U.S. history, and how his empire came crashing down. He wasn't born into power. He didn't inherit an empire. But by the 1970s, Frank Lucas was one of the most feared and richest men in America, and he built it all from the ground up in Harlem. Yet behind the rise was a story of pain, survival, and ambition, shaped by the brutal realities of race and poverty in mid-century America. The world Frank Lucas was born into didn't offer many paths to power, especially for a young black man in the segregated South. His empire would be built not only on drugs, but on a deep understanding of people, systems, and the streets that made him. His story would forever blur the line between genius and destruction. Frank Lucas was born in 1930 in La Grange, North Carolina, dirt poor. He once said he decided to turn to crime the day he watched his cousin get murdered by the Ku Klux Klan, and nobody did a thing. At 15, he hopped a bus to Harlem with just a few dollars in his pocket and a dream, not for fame, but for power. He arrived with nothing but desperation and determination, stepping into a Harlem alive with jazz, vice, and opportunity. The streets were unforgiving, but for Lucas, they were also a classroom. Every hustle, every fight, every lesson learned in the shadows would harden him for the empire he would later build. Harlem didn't just change him, it created him. In Harlem, Lucas hustled however he could. Pool halls, petty theft, running errands for gangsters. But his big break came when he started working for Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson, the godfather of Harlem. Bumpy taught him everything: how to command respect, how to keep your mouth shut, and how to make money. Under Bumpy's wing, Lucas learned that crime wasn't just about power, it was about control. Bumpy's empire ran on loyalty, precision, and silence, and Lucas absorbed it all like scripture. He saw how the game was played at the highest level and began to dream of something even bigger. In those days, Harlem was a chessboard, and Bumpy taught him how to move like a king. When Bumpy died in 1968, the streets of Harlem went into chaos. Every hustler wanted the throne. Frank Lucas saw an opportunity. While America fought a war in Vietnam, Lucas saw a different kind of battle and a different kind of opportunity. The death of his mentor marked both an ending and a beginning. With Bumpy gone, the balance of Harlem's underworld shifted, and Lucas understood that fortune favored those willing to take risks. He knew he couldn't outmuscle the mafia, but he could outthink them. For Lucas, the streets became a battlefield, and he intended to win by rewriting the rules. He realized most heroin in New York came from the mafia. That meant middlemen, and middlemen meant money lost. So Lucas did the unthinkable. He cut out the middleman entirely. He traveled to Southeast Asia himself, right into the heart of the Golden Triangle, where the world's purest heroin was produced. This move was bold, dangerous, and visionary. While other gangsters relied on hearsay and handoffs, Lucas went straight to the source. He built an international supply chain before most corporations even dreamed of globalization. In the jungles of Asia, he found a new definition of power: control from the ground up. There, he struck a deal directly with an Asian supplier, a man known only as Blue Magic. The heroin was 98% pure, stronger than anything on the street. And then came the most shocking part of his plan: how to smuggle it back to the U.S. Lucas claimed he used the coffins of dead American soldiers, hidden compartments beneath the caskets. Whether myth or truth, one thing's certain: his product flooded New York. It was a chilling intersection of war and greed, profit and loss. The same planes carrying home the fallen were delivering a poison that would tear through American cities. By the early 1970s, blue magic was everywhere. Lucas sold heroin that was purer and cheaper than anything his rivals could touch. He made over $1 million a day. Yes, a day. But unlike flashy gangsters, Lucas kept a low profile. No fancy cars, no gold chains. He once said, "The loudest one in the room is the weakest one in the room." For years, this discipline was his greatest armor. While others flaunted wealth, he built power quietly, like a ghost moving through Harlem. But success has a way of making even the most disciplined man slip. As his fortune grew, so did his confidence, and eventually, his need to be seen. That is, until one day. At an Ollie fight in Madison Square Garden, Lucas showed up wearing a $100,000 chinchilla coat and matching hat, a gift from his wife. That one moment of attention made him a target. Detectives looked at him and thought, "Who's that guy sitting ringside next to celebrities?" That's when his empire started drawing heat. It was a single moment of vanity that lit the fuse. The coat became more than fashion. It became a symbol of exposure, a signal to law enforcement that Harlem had a new king worth watching. For Lucas, the spotlight that night would mark the beginning of the end. Enter Richie Roberts, an honest cop in a department drowning in corruption. When Roberts saw millions in unmarked cash turned in by his team, he made it his mission to find out where it came from. All roads led to Frank Lucas. Roberts became obsessed, the kind of man who couldn't let go once he found a thread. In a city where dirty money ruled the precincts, his integrity made him dangerous. The cat-and-mouse chase between Lucas and Roberts would become legend. Two men on opposite sides of the law, bound by the same obsession with control and truth. In 1975, after years of surveillance, wiretaps, and undercover work, the DEA and NYPD raided Lucas's New Jersey mansion. They found over $500,000 in cash, a fortune back then, and enough evidence to destroy his empire. Lucas was sentenced to 70 years in prison. For the first time, the man who controlled a global network was trapped, powerless behind bars. His empire, once untouchable, had crumbled overnight. The streets he once ruled moved on without him. Power, he learned, was fleeting, and loyalty even more so. But he wasn't done yet. Facing decades behind bars, Lucas did something no one expected. He flipped. He gave up names, not just small-time hustlers, but corrupt cops, federal agents, even members of his own network. His cooperation led to more than 100 convictions. In return, his sentence was reduced to just 5 years. But the price? His reputation. In the streets, snitching was the ultimate betrayal. Lucas traded the fear of his name for freedom, but it came at a cost he would carry for the rest of his life. After prison, Lucas lived quietly, mostly out of the spotlight. He tried to mentor young people, warning them against the life he once glorified. In his later years, he watched American Gangster make him a legend all over again. Played by Denzel Washington, immortalized as the man who beat the system. The system beat him back. As age slowed him, Lucas reflected on what he'd built and what he'd lost. The fame was bittersweet. The myth lived larger than the man. Behind the legend was a man haunted by choices, still trying to make peace with the ghosts of his empire. Frank Lucas died in 2019 at the age of 88. His story remains a mirror, showing both the ambition and destruction of the American dream. A man who built an empire from nothing and lost it all in the end. He was the embodiment of contradiction, ruthless yet brilliant, disciplined yet reckless. His legacy is not just one of crime, but of vision, the ability to see what others couldn't, and the arrogance to believe he could control it. In the end, Frank Lucas's story reminds us that every empire, no matter how powerful, eventually meets its reckoning. His story remains a mirror, showing both the ambition and destruction of the American dream. A man who built an empire from nothing and lost it all in the end.